In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Hi, welcome to the In the Last Days television program with myself, Martin Blackham. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Natalie's behind the scenes, but she says hello. We have a very special guest in the studio today, Rabbi Ari Abramowitz. Is that right? I got it right? Ari Abramowitz. So thank you so much for coming in the studio today. Some of you will know Ari's voice because you were for many years on Arutz Sheva, Israel National Radio, and you had a program with Jeremy Gimpel. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Ari's originally from Houston, Texas. You are the brother of former Jerusalem Post literary editor Miriam Abramowitz Shaviv, and you from the Mahan Yehuda area of Jerusalem, and you've been a producer, broadcaster, and presenter on Israel National Radio. Now, some of you may listen to Israel National Radio, so you may well remember, particularly the Tuesday Night Live show. A lot of. Well,
that was television, right? That was television. Which people, by the way, say that I've got a perfect face for radio, but no, we sort of gradually shifted from radio to television. I'm sorry if you're giving the introduction.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And you've been on CNN, Fox News, BBC. You're a reserve in the IDF, and you also have the website, thelandofisrael.com, which is has a lot of hits and is a large video content provider. So we'll put all the details on the screen so you can see the websites to go to and to see those videos. So thank you so much for coming in into the studio today. Also, I forgot to mention that you've also been running for Knesset recently with Naftali Bennett's party. And so maybe we can start off with that. What was it like to run for Knesset?
That's an interesting place to start, right in there. It was eye-opening. It was in some ways it re-inspired me because I thought I was going to go in there and meet all these parliamentary candidates and parliamentarians that are corrupt. And there are those that are corrupt, don't get me wrong. But I saw that the initial motivation for them to get into it, their overriding motivation is because they want to do good things for Israel and the Jewish people. But what I saw is that when you think it's so important for you to be doing anything or to be anywhere in specific, so important that once you get there, you'll do these good things, but to get in there, you have to compromise a little bit. Once you get in, you're already a compromised person because you've compromised so much. So it helped me realize in my life that I don't know where I'm supposed to end up. I'm going to put the steering wheel in God's hands. And the best way to do that is just to be absolutely true. So for me, the whole politics was a platform. The political campaign was a platform to get the ideas out and to teach and to share and to inspire. If I ended up in the Knesset, great. And if not, that's also just as great.
But you, as part of the running for Knesset, you had meetings and you were meeting the Anglo community, which is really part of what, having done the research for the program, I can see that you're really working with the Anglos of Israel, as many of our guests have, and that's such an important part of Israel, and yet seems to have been neglected, the Anglo side, maybe because they're trying to, when you've made Aliyah, you're trying to fit into the country and learn Hebrew, but the Anglo part seems to be re-emerging. And I know a lot of our a lot of our viewers will really have liked the Tuesday Night Live, which is what I want to talk about next. I know Natalie and I, we both loved Tuesday Night Live, and it was such an important program for us because nobody else was doing that. Nobody else was coming from Jerusalem with a show. And it was just phenomenal. So maybe you can tell us, how did that start?
Well, first of all, I have to say there's so many different angles you could have taken with this interview. And to start with the whole Anglo politics thing, fantastic, because that's a subject that's really close to my heart. So I'll start with that one. and then we'll go to the Tuesday Night Live. For me, the Anglo approach to the campaign was so meaningful because there's an ingathering of the exiles right now from all over the world. Jews are coming home. But the Jews that are coming from the West are unique in that they're not running away from things. They're not running away from persecution or economic downturn. They're running to. And that's a very different, there's no way we could appeal to this demographic by saying, we will do what's in your best interest. Because they're not people that naturally think about what's in their best interest, but they see themselves as part of the Jewish story, as they want to be on the center stage of Jewish history. And when we say the way to appeal to them is say this is what's best for the nation, for the Jewish people. So it's a unique demographic, and I feel like they were largely ignored, not because of malicious reasons, just for some reason they weren't on anyone's radar. And then when we started speaking to them, all of a sudden the Jerusalem Post for the first time was getting bombarded with advertisements from every single political party trying to approach this demographic, because Western Jews have influence. A lot of them have a little bit more money than, you know, Jews elsewhere in the world because they're running to here and they have some of that with them. But, you know, to me it was also for them. It was for them, it was for the Jews of Israel hearing them. Because a lot of Jews here in Israel, you know, when you're born into a miracle and you're immersed in it. I saw a cartoon, two fish were talking to each other. And one said, I don't know, do you believe in water? You know, we're so immersed in the miracles of God here that sometimes it's hard for us to see it right before our eyes. But when a Western Jew comes and they want to be a part of it, for a Jew in Israel to hear that, it's so inspiring. And it makes them so grateful that they're here. And I think that's part of the rectification of our generation, is to fix the sin of the spies.
And there'd been a concentration on different Jewish communities. For example, the Russian Jewish community, there was a big concentration on the Aliyah from Russia, and many of you may be aware of that. The Russians coming, you know, because it was closed off, and then suddenly the doors were open, and there was this huge Aliyah, and then the Ethiopians. Again, there was the rescue. Fantastic stories of the Ethiopians, and even as we're doing a program, it has been the recent Aliyah of the Ethiopians, but the Anglo Aliyah or the Western Aliyah seems to have been neglected. And I know there's been the birthright and Nefesh Ben Nefesh have been working hard, but it seems that it's been forgotten. Is that true?
I think it's been forgotten because, one, it's an anomaly, and two, the numbers aren't the same as Jews that are fleeing the Soviet Union or that are leaving Ethiopia. It's not as noteworthy, and because there's been a steady trickle since the foundation of the state and before, it has been somewhat neglected. But I think right now it needs to be focused on big time, because it is my belief, it is my faith, that the Jewish people will come together in Israel from all throughout the world. And the final holdout is really America. How many Jews are elsewhere in the world other than America and Israel? Like a few 100,000, that's it. I mean, not even that much, perhaps. So I think we need to really speak to the Jews of America in a positive, inviting sense. This is not a place of tragedy, and we're doing better here than, like, our economy is thriving. This is a wonderful, vibrant, exciting place to live. So I'm a big advocate of birthright and birthright-like programs to get them over here. And that's part of what Tuesday Night Live was about, to sort of segue into that I was shocked when we had a full packed house in one of the largest theaters of Jerusalem. And not only we had a packed house, but it stayed that way for 3-4 years until we had to stop it because we were running for Knesset. So I had to ask myself, why are people in Jerusalem coming? We want to send a message there. And I realized that once you make Aliyah here, how long have you been here?
4 years.
4 years. So there's a certain thing that happens. Life takes over. Your kids are in the army. You have to make a living. And we would come together once every 2 weeks and have this huge celebration of, we're here. This is just what is, and the beauty and the wisdom. People here around the world, the terror and corruption. But really, I mean, Israel is the most vibrant, exciting, lively, wonderful place. I would rather live here in the third stall of the Jerusalem Central bus station's public restroom than a big home in America, just because life here is beautiful. And that's the message we wanted to share, and it was really going well. And there's been a steady response we've been receiving. Please start it again. Please start it again. So we're thinking about that, how to do that, what it would be.
And it was quite a commitment because you had to hire quite a big hall. You, from memory, you were in a big place, and you had live TV, which again has the logistics of that are very interesting. That you were broadcasting live, I believe, from the theatre, and you had music, and so it wasn't just, you know, an interview or something, but it was a variety. You had different sections of the show as well.
Well, one thing we wanted to show was the music. You know, we had, I remember one of my favorites is Sinai Tour. He's like the Bob Marley of Israel, in my mind, at least. And his home was destroyed in Hebron, and on top of the destroyed ashes of his home, he had like a concert that he played about the Jewish people coming together and loving each other, even right across from the soldiers that just destroyed his home. And I don't know, the contrast, the range of emotions that we're able to have here in Israel, of love, and at the same time be surrounded by 23 Arab states and 57 Muslim states that want to wipe us out, and we're still able to be, life here is a miracle. It's a miracle. So one of the other miracles was the logistical challenges of that show, that a guy as incompetent as me could possibly have anything like that come together. So it was great, and I'm sure great things will happen. And when we took it around America, that's actually what happened. We decided to take it throughout the states. And interesting, it lost a little bit of its magic, at least for me. I didn't feel like it had, and the audiences were huge. We had 3,000 people in Dallas in the huge theater, and it didn't have the same magic that it has in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that's because it was here? And in other words, you're broadcasting from Jerusalem to the nations, and there's the excitement of being with the Anglo-Jewish audience here live in the land, and the people were, that's what the people wanted. They wanted this connection, and there was, as I say, there was nobody else doing that. For Natalie and myself, we were so excited because it was live. It was, you know, it was in English. And we loved it, and I believe, you know, there's a lot of people who are watching who will have watched Tuesday Night Live, and they can still see some of the programs, can't they? You've got some of the shows are still available on video.
Well, I'm actually starting to have them re-released, because we had to take them all off of the internet, because when we ran for Knesset, I don't know if you remember what happened, that's a whole nother story, but we had to just take everything we had off the internet, because there was a lot of political rivals. They were looking to cut and dice things. So we're now re-releasing them, which is really exciting for me, because I wasn't able to even watch them myself, ever. When they were, I don't know if you can watch yourself on TV. It's not an easy thing to do, so I never watched them. But now that I'm re-releasing them, I'm seeing them, and it was really exciting. It's like I get so inspired from watching it now, which I did not think would happen. But I think another key to it, Rabbi David Aaron, he told me this beautiful thing. We were sitting in the old city of Jerusalem, and he said, this room is filled with Japanese music. So we said, Rabbi, what are you talking about? It's filled with Japanese music. He said, filled with the Japanese music, can't you hear it? We said, what do you mean? He said, well, if there's a shortwave radio on the table here in this room, and we tune it into the right frequency, we'll hear the Japanese music. Meaning the Japanese music is here in the room, but you need to be tuned into the right frequency. He said, God is everywhere. Throughout the whole world, God is everywhere. But when you're in Jerusalem, you're tuned into the frequency that you can experience God, you can feel God. And that's why I think there was that magic in Jerusalem. On top of the content, just on this sort of spiritual level, there's a magic that happens here. There's like an experiential, and sometimes we don't have the right gauges in our mind to know what we're feeling, but you just feel it. It's like an intangible. Do you agree with me?
Yeah. I mean, this is why we were in the UK doing In the Last Days television program, and that's why we needed to be here, because you can cover Israel, you can cover the news, you can do interviews in the UK, but to be here in the land, and this is why our viewers so much like the program, because it's from here, it's different, and they like that. They're excited by that, and I know the Tuesday Night Live TV show would be everybody will be very excited if it's back on again, and we hope that you'll be able to do that again. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Aliyah and about your Aliyah, because you kind of made two Aliyahs, if I'm not mistaken. The first one was when you came here and you came in the army, and then you came back another time, and you were with
I call it the second coming.
So the first one is amazing, because you came here to Israel, and you joined the IDF, and you're still a reserve in the Israeli army. Then you returned to America because your parents thought that it was maybe not safe, because they heard stories that Israel, especially if you're in the army, with terrorism and with Hezbollah in the, and maybe if you're in the north, that would be the issue. And then you came back, you went to New York, and then you were stabbed. Unbelievable.
First of all, I don't know, you've done real research here. I'm really impressed with that. Yeah, I came here for the year after high school, and I thought it was just going to be for 9 months. And a few weeks into it, I'm like, that's it. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm never going to go back. And my parents really wanted me to. I went back for 1 semester.
And they were in Texas.
They were in Texas. I went back to New York for 1 semester. They thought it was a phase. The minute that semester was over, the minute it was over, I was on a flight back to Israel. I went to an Ethiopian absorption center where I learned Hebrew, which was sort of an accident. I didn't know that it was an Ethiopian absorption center because the application was in Hebrew and I couldn't read it. And they assumed that if I'm applying, I must be Ethiopian. So the first day I showed up, it was me and 50 Ethiopian Jews.
Wow.
So I felt like the white sheep a little bit. But it was perfect for me because they were it was like a family reunion, which is weird because we looked different, had different cultures, but we felt that connection. Then I joined the army. I was in the Golani Infantry Brigades. Whole world of stories there. Best experience of my life, serving in the first Jewish army since the times of King David, right? I mean, how can you get better than that? Then I went to university for a year, and my parents were like, please, please come back. So I went for a year and a half. During that year and a half, I was stabbed in the back walking down the street in New York, which I was happy about to some degree. I mean, at the time I wasn't happy about it because I had a knife in my back. But, it just showed I was like in Lebanon, I was in Gaza, I was a machine gunner, and then I go to New York and I get stabbed. And the police said he needed to stab a Jew to get into a gang. But, it just shows that it's always in God's hands. Our life is in God's hands, and when it's our time wherever we are. But is our life going to be filled with meaning and purpose? Are we going to put ourselves in a position where we're a vehicle and a vessel for God's light in the world and a character in the story? Or are we going to be on the sidelines? That's our decision, perhaps, but perhaps how we experience it, but try to stay in the rational world. What was your question?
I was just saying, it was just amazing that, a lot of people think, and maybe some of our viewers, and you've not been to Israel, see, because of the image that's portrayed by the news, we see the Arabs throwing stones, we see suicide bombers, we see the fighting which has been in the missiles being fired. They have this image that Israel is a very dangerous place, and yet what amazed me about your story was that you were going in much more dangerous situations than we face doing the program, but you were going up into the military places where definitely things are dangerous, and yet you went to New York, which people would think, that is perfectly safe to go back to America, and yet this happened to you.
I also saw the World Trade Center come down before my eyes.
Wow.
I was like, I got to get out of this country. It's not safe here. I'm going to go back to the Middle East.
Was that after the terrible thing that happened to you in New York? That happened afterwards?
It was like just a couple weeks.
Wow.
I mean, it was a
pretty
intense
So tell us
month.
about that. How did that happen for you?
For me, I'm always waiting for something huge to happen to absolutely shift the paradigm through which we experience the world. And for me, that was one of those shifts. And I thought that it would sort of hasten the return of the Jewish people. And the truth is, I meet Jews all the time here that say, yeah, when the World Trade Center came down, it opened my eyes. I got to return to Israel. That was part of it. But in some ways, I feel that, that would take us to the entire Islamic discussion, which I'm more than happy to go to, but we'd probably need another 28 minutes for that. Because my experience and interaction and relationship with our cousins and the countries around us has fundamentally changed as my journey here changes. But I think it's about this. It all comes down to the temple. Because whether or not we're conscious of it or not, the temple is what we've been praying for, is the climax of the Jewish mission in the world. Because the temple, what is our job? What do I see my job is? And the job of the Jewish people is to be a vessel for God's light into the world, We're not better than anyone else. We're not worse than anyone else. We just have a function, and that's our function and our purpose, and the temple is that. And a lot of people think we're praying for a Jewish temple, but it's really not a Jewish temple. Isaiah says, "For my house is a house of prayer for all nations." Ki beiti beit tefillah yikra lechol ha'amim. And when we're praying for the temple, it's for all the people of the world to be coming and to praying with us. We're sort of the Kohanim, the priests of the temple, as the Jewish nation. But the temple is for everybody. It's not just our God. God created the whole world and every human being in his image. So I think that's sort of the consciousness that we're trying to do. And as I'm traveling the world still now, that's what I feel like my mission is. It's to bless, to give a blessing, and to share light, and to empower people.
Which was the the name of your radio program on Israel National Radio was A Light Unto the Nations, and
right. We have a podcast now. Jeremy and I were sort of, after the Knesset campaign, he went to Mizrahi and I went to Keren HaYesod, and now we're re-emerging together. After it's almost, we said to ourselves, this feels like I'm going off to, you're in the army, you're in an army unit, and then they send one guy off to medics course, and one guy to sniper school, and one guy to, and then you come back in the unit and you're trained in your different functions. So we feel like we're coming back now with these skills we've gotten in different places, and we're going to use it for our mission. I think that's the source of our friendship. That's the strength of our friendship, is that, I have my mission in the world that's unique to me, like every other human being, and he has his. But when ours come together, it's like our mission in the world's on crack. It's like just so intense and powerful, and we're able to do really wonderful things together.
And one of the things I've noticed is you've recently done a video about this, is about the issue of the Jewish communities under threat, and in fact I remember the video was where the police were trying to remove you. Is that right?
Yeah, it's fun. I just found this video and I told them to put it up on the site, and it's sort of taken. I was in Gaza, and I was there for 2.5 weeks before the disengagement, and they actually had to carry me out of Gaza, pick me up and carry me out. It took like 7 soldiers. I wasn't fighting. I'm a soldier, so it was very difficult on me as a soldier to stand against the Israeli army.
So for the viewers, I ought to just explain, what happened was that in Gaza, the Israeli government decided to remove the Jewish community, which Nati and I believe was wrong, and you were there in the Gaza area, in those Jewish communities, trying to protect those communities from being removed, but sadly they were removed. So there must have been a great conflict with you, for there's your comrades who you fought with, trying to remove you and trying to uproot the Jewish community.
It was very, very painful. It was not only painful for me, for the whole country. And when I say the whole country, I mean also the people who were doing it. I felt their pain as I felt my own pain. They weren't the bad guys in my mind. In some ways, it was hard for me to find a bad guy. It was very tragic. Because keep in mind, when we went down to Gaza, it's not like we occupied anyone. It was empty deserts. The Arab sheiks were laughing at us. Well, you're going to do something with this, and within a few years, 60% of Israel's organic exports were sent from Gaza.
Wow.
And it's not because we're so brilliant. It's not. It's because God has said, when the Jewish people return to the land, the desert will blossom like a rose, yifrach kechavetzelet, as Isaiah said. And literally, we see this. And then when we left, they said, oh, we can have this big, the produce now, and we can send it out and make all this money. But all of a sudden, they can't keep the worms out of it, and they were not able to do anything with it. And it's not because they're any worse than we are at it. It's because it's a promise and a covenant God has made with us. And the pain for me was that as a soldier in the Israeli army, I went down to a number of the families there, and I said, I'm refusing to do this. My job here is not to rip Jews out of their homes and to ethnically cleanse Gaza of Jews. Like, imagine the reverse were to be done. Imagine in any capacity we were to pull Arabs out of their homes, the international community. But if it's to Jews, it's a different story. But I said, I'm not going to do that. And they said, well, we've told our children not to refuse orders. So I said, why? Here I'm from Jerusalem. And they said, well, this was just a few families, they said this. But they said, if, without the Israeli army, we wouldn't be here. What would we be without the Israeli army? And I realized it's that same idolatry issue. The Israeli army is beautiful and fantastic. I'm privileged to be in it. But it's not an end in and of itself. It's without God we wouldn't be in Israel, and he used the Israeli army as a vehicle. But the minute we create we start putting power in the vehicle itself, God takes that vehicle, because we made an idol out of it, and smashes it over our heads as a kindness to us, so we can see where our own idols are. So I feel like this whole journey we're in Israel is to break through our idolatry and put our hearts back in God. And when you look at what's happening around the world with Kerry and Obama, when I hear Jews say, oh, we're okay because America's with us, they have our back, that's idolatry. And we're forcing God's hand to make America and the rest of the world turn against us. That's what it's going to be in the end. Right? The show is called The Last Days. Well, if you want to talk about the last days, I'd like to think of them as the first days of something better and new. But the world is going to turn against us, and it needs to, because we're going to look north, south, east, and west and see nothing but enemies converging on us, and then we're going to have to look up. And that's where our hearts need to be.
We're out of time. I'm so sorry.
It's a perfect note to end on.
It's such a powerful concept about idolatry, and we'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for coming in today and joining us on the program. We hope to have you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, you can email us at info@inthelastdays.com. Visit the website www.inthelastdays.com, and remember, we're living in the last days.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings, or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.